So I'm often asked in this work what I would do if I could go back in time and speak to a younger version of myself and give that younger version of myself some advice around masculinity and the sort of learning experiences that I've gone through. So today I want to share three of those lessons or tips that I would share with a younger version of me if I was able to go back in time. The first one is when we're talking about worthiness, your worthiness, how worthy you feel of respect, love, etc., is not predicated or influenced by your external achievements or accomplishments. Now, this might sound a little bit like, wait, hold on a second, this. What do you mean by that? What are we talking about there? And one of the things for me in this walk of exploring and expanding on my ideas of masculinity, one of the most, let's say, painful, one of the most challenging processes for me was having to confront how much of my worth I placed in what I achieved or what I had accumulated, the list of achievements, or how well I performed in X, Y, and Z context. And I know this is the case for a lot of guys as well, because I speak to a lot of guys, I work with a lot of guys in this work. There is often this pressure to fulfill or achieve external facing accomplishments or gather and accumulate a resume or evidence of what you have done and how you've done it. And this is not me saying that working hard or working towards goals and objectives isn't important. What I am saying is that if we place so much effort and so much of our sense of worthiness on what we've achieved or how much we've achieved, we're going to be always feeling incomplete. One of the things that I've learned as as an older version of me is when it comes to feeling worthy, worthiness is not an external pursuit or performance, it is an internal process of cultivation. It is a process of recognizing and acknowledging and honoring the person you are in the present, the person that you are at this point in time, and consciously acknowledging that worthiness of love, care, respect, etc. And this is something for me, as I said, was particularly challenging because if you knew me around 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, for me, one of those uh, pivotal moments in my life going through university and in this process of working towards longer term goals, I was a person that was obsessed with achieving goals, but not just achieving goals, competing against everybody else. I had to be the best. And I didn't just have to be the best. I had to be the best to the point where other people would look at me and go, he's too far gone. He's too clear. He's just at that level where we can't get to. And I had this massive chip on my shoulder, which honestly, it took a while for me to really dig in the soil of my heart to recognize where that came from, because that was never something that I had for parts of my life. But when it came to university specifically and working towards that university degree and working towards some of the things that I was really passionate about, that process of trying to be the best or actively seeing people as my competitors was something that really took away, in many ways, from that particular portion or season of my life. I was so focused on proving myself that as a result of that process of trying to prove myself, I hid away elements of myself from others. I equated the completion of a goal and objective with, okay, once I do that, then I'll be good. Then I'll be straight. Then I'll be able to relax and chill. And guess what happened? I got to that point where I performed really well with my degree. I, did incredibly well in terms of how I finished, and all of the sort of external accolades, etc., were accumulated. And then I got to the end of that particular season, and guess what happened? What's next? There was no happiness. There was no pride. It was just, okay, what's next? And it was in that moment where the seeds were starting to be, I suppose, planted in this process of actually going, well, hold on, there's got to be more to this than this constant cycle of start, stop, start, stop, start, complete, start, complete. And so if I was going to go back in time, the first thing I'd say to a younger version of me, specifically a version of me 8 to 10 years ago, is, hey, you're looking for a version of worthiness that's found in what you have or what you've accumulated, when who you are right now is enough, is deserving of love and respect. Because this process of trying to be the best and trying to work towards the highest grade possible and being, the best in my class, etc., they can look like and be seen as, why would you not? That's good, right? But for me, it's about, as I said, digging in the soil of my heart. Those goals weren't set because I wanted to be the best version of myself. They were set because somewhere deep within me, in some place, I didn't feel worthy without those goals being completed. I felt like my respect or that sense of worthiness was only complete if I achieved those goals in the context of the work that I was working towards. And I think that's one of the things that I work with a lot of men and boys around. We are pushing towards being the best versions of ourselves. But when we dig in the soil of our heart and we actually think, okay, well, what does that mean? Typically, there is a pursuit of worthiness or a sense of trying to feel good enough. And for me, I'm blessed and incredibly fortunate enough to be around friends and family that remind me all the time, you're good enough. What you're doing is great, but that's not why we love you. But in this particular season of my life, I was so kind of in my own zone, isolated and sort of focusing on the goal that I kind of turned my back to that. So I tell my younger self, listen, you are and always have been enough. What you achieve is great, but that isn't evidence of worthiness. That's evidence of you being able to complete a goal. And there is a difference in that process. So that's the first thing that I would share with the younger version of me. The second thing I'd share is be yourself. That might sound cliche. That might sound a little bit obvious and perhaps a little bit expected. But I write about this a lot in my work. I call this specific experience that I've observed, and I've definitely had this myself, that men and boys go through. I've called it duality strain, where there is a specific type of masculinity that needs to be or seems to be positioned as the correct way or the most appropriate form of masculinity that we see culturally, that we feel that we have to perform as men. And then there's us, the human beings behind that performance and behind that projection. And if I look back to younger versions of me, even younger, beyond the sort of 8 to 10 years, I'm talking high school versions of me, and I've done posts on this in the past as well. I would go back to that younger version of myself and I'd tell him, stop pretending to be this type of guy that you are not. Like, yeah, you're goofy. Yeah, you have a good sense of humor. Yeah, you have a lot of ideas and perspectives and you can be quite entertaining, but you're playing a role here and you're trying to be a type of masculinity that you don't really feel closely aligned to. You're doing what other people expect of you instead of actually being true to you. And I'd go back to that younger version of me as I tell a lot of young people that I work with to this day, stop trying to be a version of yourself for other people and explore and make space for who you are. Me, I'm quite a sensitive person. I'm also quite a quiet person. And so if you went and met me 10 to 15 years ago, you'd at times meet quite a loud and hyper-social person, quite funny out there. But really, that was a caricature performance that I'd placed because I thought that was what was expected of men or boys, teens in that specific context. I'd become so engrossed in the performance that I'd actually lost aspects of who I was. I turned off those elements. In private, I might let that sort of, experience or those ideas of masculinity be projected or idea of who I was be projected in private. But it wasn't something that I'd made room for in the day-to-dayness of my life. And I speak to young men about this all the time specifically. So if you're a young man watching this, hear me on this one. Who you are beyond the performance is who you need to be in the spaces that you're a part of. If you're emotionally sensitive, if you're quite quiet and reserved, if you have specific interests and hobbies that might not go in alignment with what you think typical masculinity is, guess what, bro? That's you. That's you. That's the true you. And if we don't make space for versions of ourselves that feel most true to be projected and communicated in the spaces and places that we exist within, guess what? We're going to go through life pretending to be something that we might actually not be. And I don't want that for anybody. And I did it for a while because I think all of us in life go through that process trying to find out who we are. But I would definitely go back to that younger version of me and say, hey, listen, like, stop trying to be what people expect of you and be who you feel you are and who you want to be in those spaces. That's the second thing I'd tell younger versions of me. The third thing I'd say, and this is something that applies to the context we're in right now, is for me, the third thing I tell younger me is that the world doesn't hate or dislike men, doesn't hate or dislike you. They're just calling you to be better. And I don't know how many of you watch this podcast can remember the movement that happened probably around, I might be getting this wrong, but in my memory, there was a movement around 2014 through 2016, this men are trash movement, right? Which is very similar in some ways to the sort of misandry kind of narrative or misandry positionality that we're seeing online right now, okay? But slightly different, but quite similar as well. And I'll be honest, your boy was in the camp of not all men are trash though. I'm not trash. Stop generalizing men. And I was very defensive about something I didn't really understand. I was very defensive because I was taking a systemic or cultural critique personally instead of actually, again, inspecting the soil in my heart and in my mind and thinking, well, why is this bothering me so much? And I would go back in time and tell the younger version of me that invitations for betterment aren't evidence of inadequacy, but they are opportunities to evolve and grow further. Because I think what I see to this day is a lot of dysregulation and challenge. And I've spoken about this in previous episodes, that at times that dysregulation and that sense of I'm being attacked doesn't actually allow room or create room for different ideas and perspectives to land, to be processed, to be reflected on, and when necessary, to be metabolized. And for me, I'd go back to a younger version of me and say, listen, like evidence of improvement or invitations to improve isn't evidence of your inadequacy. It's an opportunity for you to get better and evolve, to think about things differently. Stop being offended at the generalization and start looking at the context that you exist within. And that's something that I was very fortunate. I've been around incredible people in my life, but specifically the women in my life who have mentored me, who have, you know, really shown me aspects of myself that I wasn't necessarily aware of or attuned to at points in my life. If it wasn't for them in those spaces, I wouldn't be able to sort of, do this work that I'm doing right now, to be honest. And of course, other people were involved in that process. But there was something really potent for me at that point in my life of being around women and mentors specifically who were kind of calling me on my own defensiveness and creating that reflective room for me to think about things differently. That if I could go back in time, I would plant those seeds in the younger version of me in that heart posture so that that soil can really make room for those plants, for lack of a better term, to grow. Because again, for me, I have these conversations with young people all the time about, taking offense at the generalization instead of actually looking at the context that we're in. And those conversations are really powerful. They're really fruitful in their specific moment in their lives that they're meeting and contacting me, but also those ideas of masculinity too. So that's the third thing that I would go back in time and tell a younger version of me. Now, I'm going to be honest, I've got probably about another 10 that I would really sort of unpack and explore. But I'm going to leave it at 3 for this specific video. If you want more, then let me know. But these are the things for me that as I'm thinking about this and reflecting on this at the time of recording, these are the 3 things that I would definitely go back and tell a younger version of me who is kind of exploring and examining or trying to make sense of his masculinity at this point in time. So if you like the video, please feel free to share with others. Drop a like, drop a share. Would really appreciate it. And yeah, if you want some more, let me know. Have a wonderful week. Big blessings to you, and I'll see you soon.